Howdy! Welcome to my shop. I'm going to show you how I built these wrench holders from scrap metal to go on my tool wall. Welcome to my shop. My shop is forever a work in progress. This is my tool wall. In a previous video, I built socket holders from metal for my tool wall. Now it's time to put my wrenches back on the wall. Before, I just used 3-inch construction screws, and they were working just fine, but I had a need to build something useful. I will weld some rods to flat steel, which should be pretty straightforward. I can drill holes and weld from the back, or just weld the stud directly to the face of the steel. I'm going to have a little test with some flat steel and some of the 3/16 rods. I did find that using a magnetic right angle holder piece made holding the rod perpendicular a whole lot easier. Wish I'd have thought about that when I did my socket holder. My first face weld failed. My second face weld worked and was pretty strong, but not real pretty. Then I drilled a hole and put the rod through it and welded from the back side while trying to hold the rod straight. This was strong also. The front side looked much better, and no one will see my grind marks on the back side. Now for developing the design layout. I want my metric and SAE to be matching. I laid out all the wrenches, metric and SAE. The flat steel I have is 1 1/4 inch by 3/16. I figured out how much horizontal length I would need for both, then chose the longer one, then added another stud. My flat steel pieces came out to 36 inches. For the length of the studs, I determined the length I would need to hold 3 of my bigger wrenches on one stud. For me, that is 2 3/4 inches. I wanted my wrenches to be evenly spaced. I could lay them in a row and make a mark for each, but my wrenches are different sizes, obviously, but also different types and construction. So hang on, I'm attempting to do some math here. I figured what space I would need for my bulkier wrenches in different sizes. Like a space for the 1/2-inch wrench needs to be about 1 1/16. The space needed for 11/16 needed to be about 1 7/16. I did some spreadsheet magic and guesswork and came up with the formula. I would take the wrench hole size, multiply that by 2.125, and that gave me the space I would use. At least for me, it came out pretty good. I put a piece of painter's tape down on the flat steel, drew a straight line down the middle, and marked the spacing I figured out. I used a punch to go through the tape and also mark the steel. Then I moved the tape to the other steel and punched through the holes there too. You may have noticed I used different diameter of rods, and may be asking yourself, what scientific method did he integrate here, I wonder? I gathered all the scrap rods I had together. There was some 3/16, some 1/4 inch, some 5/16, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. Obviously, a 5/16 wrench will not fit on a 1/2 inch rod or even a 1/4 inch. Anyways, here's my method. I took all the 3/16 rods and cut all the pieces I could from it, then split it between the two. That determined how many studs I would have, and for me that was 4 each. Same with the 1/4-inch dowels. I came up with 6 each. For the 5/16, there were 7 each, and 3 each for the 1/2-inch dowels. That was me using my scrap intelligently, not necessarily the must-do method. I drilled holes corresponding to the aforementioned dowels I cut. Now we have the parts. Let's put them together. I clamped the flat steel in a position that I could hold the dowel with one hand and weld the other side. I tried to hold the stud slightly below the bar so some of the weld would go into the hole and have more hold when I ground it down later. After the welding was the grinding on the back side, then primer, and then paint. I drilled 5/32 holes for the wood screws to hold it to the tool wall. I used a 5/16 bit to use as a countersink to recess the screw heads a little. Okay, let's figure out where these will go. I put my smallest and largest wrench in different positions. If I mounted the wrenches high enough and horizontally to not interfere with what I already mounted, I wouldn't be able to read the numbers on the small wrenches. If I mounted them down low, they would all be hard to read, and it didn't seem like a good use of space. So eventually I decided to angle the wrench mount so the smaller wrenches were lower and easier to read. The socket holder that was in the way I just removed to reinstall somewhere else. This looks to be a good solution. I repeated with the metric holder. My wrenches are now on the wall, organized and looking not too shabby, I must say. Hopefully soon will be pliers holders and some other things to put on the tool walls. Thanks for watching.